thing up. We're going to go to social hour in a second. But I want to talk to you about something that is so subtle. The fish is off in the last to see the ocean. When I say it's so subtle, we've traveled the frontiers of race, of gender. Boy, we're in the middle of the next wave of gender awareness. We're in the middle of looking at leadership issues. I mean, we're living at such an amazing time. It's all hanging right there in the balance. And yet, there is an element to discover that is sitting there waiting for us to discover. And we're going to discover it. We've got 10,000 people turning 65 every day in this country. We're going to have 120 million people over 65 within the next couple of years. This awakening we may think, as Jerry said, that just has to do with people who are getting to a certain point and going, hey, am I on the back nine now? Am I in the fourth quarter of life? Is it, because something is changing and something is shifting, and we're beginning to realize we have a finite existence. No, because the more I ask people, what's it like? And I want you to turn to one person at your table right now and tell them how old you are. Just turn to one person at your table.
27? Yeah. I'm an 85. That's
So, I want you to think for a second, thank you. I want you to think for a second about, just drop down into what it felt like to tell somebody else your age. Did I tell you how old I was? Do you think I'm too young? What kind of a box do we put ourselves in and each other in? This is a frontier, understanding the role that age plays in our lives. We just came out of a session on gratitude. How many of us in that mirror talk that we have are sitting there expressing gratitude, saying, hey, older self, I see you now. I embrace you. I love you. Yeah, you got a couple of wrinkles. Yeah, you don't look the way you did when you were 25. You don't run the same speed. You're not, your golf shot, whatever. But it's okay. I love you. I love where you are. And look at what you've done. Do we embrace the older version of ourselves? Or is it that admonishing finger in our face saying, look at you. Look at you. Where'd you get that? What the hell's going on here? What's happening? What is our attitude? And I would suggest to you that it is one of the most unconscious and yet powerful factors in the quality of our lives and in the quality of our leadership. So, number one is, you're getting older. It's like, you're getting older. Look at you. Look at this version of you, the today version of you. What are the assets that you've acquired that you need to acknowledge yourself for? You're the smarter, better, more experienced, sensitive, compassionate, knowledgeable version of yourself. Look at how much better you are as a leader, as a visionary leader. Look what's waiting for you in this next iteration. As compared to, and I'll let you read through because we're in wind down mode now. Number two, getting older is a liability. I'm dreading the future. Fear. How many of us fear? Go right through the list of things we fear as we're getting older. Am I going to be replaced? Am I disposable? Am I getting older? Am I going to lose value in a culture that devalues us? In some cultures, we look around the world, you turn 60 and you're just waking up. Life is just beginning at 60 if you're blessed to have that many years. In our culture, you're on that back nine. You're 60? We're almost afraid to tell somebody how old we are. And it's not just the people who are turning 60. Ask somebody who's turning 30. Ask somebody who's turning 35 or 40 or 45. It's the age bias and the age angst that we carry, that we have the power to change. And I'm going to show you how in a second. And path 3, of course, is getting older. We're a work in progress. Who is this guy? Just briefly, you've heard a little bit from Jerry. I was one of the people who, and believe me, I didn't do it for esoteric reasons. Back in the late 70s, a lot of my clients, I have a degree in clinical psychology, were leaders in business and government. And they said, Ken, can I run this through my company? And I can't tell anybody I'm seeing a shrink. I said, how about if I'm your coach? I'll be your coach. Is that okay? And we'll do this and we'll run it. Because it does have to do with the way you are and the way you're functioning at work. So I started executive coaching. And all that is to tell you a little bit about me, that in every season of my life, my way of dropping down into the opportunity of that season and to show up in game shape for that season was to write a book. So in the early 1980s, I wrote a book called The Secrets Men Keep. And there I was on Oprah talking about what lurks in men's hearts and souls. And that morphed into the executive leadership and what visionary leadership meant. And as Jerry shared with you, and then I wrote books, because for me the greatest privilege in my life was being a father. And I wrote books about how to talk to your kids and about parenting, how to be an effective parent. And then, as Jerry shared, tragedy struck in my family. The phone rings on a night, and I'm in bliss. I'm on the top of the world, and I'm speaking all over the world, and my books are bestsellers. And the call says, your daughter has been killed in an accident in India. And if you're watching CNN 21 years ago, you saw that 4 beautiful young women died in a bus accident not far from the Taj Mahal. And so my life as I knew it was over. And then I understood, standing there in the ashes of Plan A, what it meant truly to have all the wind taken from your sails and to begin to start fighting your way back into life. I understood what resilience was, not as a concept, but as something I was living every day and fighting my way back into life. I understood what it was to live forward on a path of honor, because we wake up, and I'm sure people in this room have traveled this path. When you've gone through a traumatic loss or a severe loss, whether it's a living loss, the way Lee Rice talked about, having to adjust to the idea of your wife, that your wife might not be with you very much longer, or whether it's a life loss and somebody has died, that we have to make a choice between traveling, making despair the central organizing principle of our lives, or making honor the central organizing principle of our lives. There's a code of honoring that I'll share with you at some point. But let's go forward. So, in this new season of my life, I'm noticing, my God, I'm in my mid-60s. When did that happen? How many of you have been asking that question? When did this happen? When did this happen? How did it happen? When did it happen? We're moving, we have this incredible ride that we're on. And we move through time. And we're changing, and things about us are changing. So let's look at age and leadership. Because if you are in a position, and all of you are, to provide leadership, are you going to go first when it comes to the aging issue? Are you going to face into your age? Are you going to face into all the challenges? Are you going to do the self-audit? Now, many of you are going to be getting a copy of this book. You went first, right? You were the youngest person. Who was 29?
I'm 29. I think there might be younger than
Who's youngest?
28.
28?
Going for 27.
21, yeah, right. Here we go. All right. And by the way, who's on the other end of the spectrum? Who's been living in some of these issues for a long time? Do we have anybody older than me? I'm 68. Yeah? What do we got here?
74.
74. Do I hear 75? Do I hear 75? Gentlemen, enjoy. That's okay. You already said?
You've been everywhere.
People who are 74 were often such overachievers, and we're used to being the youngest person in the room. And we wake up one morning and guess what? We're the oldest person in the room, right? Yeah. And it's always the other person too. I heard a story the other day about a man who was afraid, because there's an interpersonal element to all this. He was afraid My wife, I think, is losing her hearing because I'm in the other room and I'm yelling and she's not hearing me. And he goes to his doctor and he says, how should I approach this? And the doctor says, stand behind her 15 feet, and then if she doesn't respond, go in closer and closer. Goes home and he starts trying it. He goes, honey, what's for dinner? And she's over the stove. No response. 10 feet. Honey, what's for dinner? Finally, he gets in right over her shoulder. He says, what's for dinner? And she turns around and she says, for the third time, chicken. So, we always think it's somebody else. Leading courageously is facing into the issues, your aging issues. And in this book, the first chapter starts with a self-audit. If you want to know what your hot issues are, hot button issues, take the self-audit. The self-audit is just simply doing a walkthrough, kind of a test drive of how am I doing with this aging thing? Where am I on this continuum from looking forward and creating my best possible future to dread and fear about the future, fear of loss? And also part of that is, how am I doing with grieving the loss of my younger self? All right? Now, we all have stories. Think about it. If we had the time, I'd say, tell a story at your table about what the younger you did. Come on now. You got some good ones. That golf shot. How you used to look. You were on the cheer squad. You're on the varsity football team. The younger you. Sometimes it's important to grieve and to bless that younger version of you as a way of moving into the you now, as a way of embracing the you of the future. We have somebody just do a beautiful presentation on virtual reality. What if we could take a picture of you right now and time travel how you're going to look in 20 years, in 15 years, in 10 years, and then have that part of you virtually talk back to you and say, here's what I want you to remember. Or I'm the you of the future. And here's what I want. You've got 15 years until I'm here, hopefully. And here's what I want to tell you about what's really precious, what's really important, what kind of a leader you can be, how you can participate with a sense of social responsibility. Because one of the great gifts of getting older is that we're in a position to pay it forward, to plant that tree that somebody else, when you start getting in your 60s, you start thinking more about stuff like this. I can plant a tree that my children or grandchildren or future generations will sit in the shade of. And it's not only something that comes from me putting my house in order, spiritually, mentally, physically, in my relationships, my close relationships, but it comes from a sense of social responsibility, that I can leave the world in a better place. So, aging courageously as a leader, and I'm going to make this available so we don't have to, because we're in Trevor mode now. I'm going to make this available but if you're lucky you're getting older, are you getting smarter, learning from experience, and so on? Just questions to ask yourself. A few challenges for executive leaders around your aging, letting go of your younger self, or how many of us are fighting to retain the power, control, status, and identity of the leader that we were. Or we're in an organization where in that culture, that's a factor. We have somebody leading who doesn't want to let go, who won't share the power, who won't share, who won't delegate, who won't empower others because they're holding on, because they're afraid that they're getting to a certain point, they're going to become obsolete. The threat of being replaced, the dread of losing your edge, and so on and so forth. Let's look at the opportunity side. How much are you cultivating in your attitude, in the way you think about your leadership and your shared leadership? How much are you cultivating these kinds of, because we have the neuropsychology that says you are creating neural pathways in the way that you're thinking about these things. How much do you look at and give yourself affirmations and allow that to guide your behavior every day? Here are a few of them. And lastly, facing in rather than looking away. You know, we live in a culture that has a pill for every pain, a diversion for every moment of emptiness, a fix for every problem. Or unfortunately, that's not reality. The reality is sometimes we need to stand courageously. And is courage the greatest virtue? Is courage threaded through every one of the other virtues? But we need to stand courageously in a moment of unknowingness, in a moment of mystery in this life, and face in still, nonetheless face in, rather than hide, deny, repress, avoid, run away from, try to outbusy, try to outrun. Self-awareness of the issues that arise as you get older. Are we awake to them? Are we talking to the people we trust, our confidants, our partners, about how are you doing with this? You know, I took this program and we talked about courageous aging. You know, let's talk about it. Let's open the conversation. Cultivating the self-care, compassion, and worth to embrace your older self at every turn. Putting your house in order is not only a legal and financial matter, it's an issue of the heart. It's an issue of your relationships and your family, and having the conversations that are so important that draw you closer, that enhance the quality of your life. And of course, kicking up some dust, being audacious, traveling, and it's not only that bucket list out there in the world, it's the bucket list in here that Lee Rice spoke so eloquently about what really matters. It's the moments that you create and that you capture and that you allow yourself to receive. These are the things. This is what makes for a quality life. And lastly, paying the good in your life forward, that others might sit in the shade of that giving tree that we talked about before. So, courageous aging is an opportunity. Looking at courage and summoning the courage. Every season of our life challenges us to summon newfound courage. The courage you need turning 40, turning 50, 60, 70, 74, 75 next year. The courage that we need to face in as we go through this incredible ride, this incredible journey, okay? This incredible experience that we're having called being alive, this gift of our years that we've been given. It means summoning the courage to face in and to come to terms with what this life is, with whatever you believe it is, with whatever you believe about where we're going, or where it all ends up, or what it all adds to. But creating that meaning, that significance, that satisfaction, that sense of connection is an act of raw courage. And I hope that in some small way, what we've talked about today inspires in you that courage, whether it's from this talk or the talks before. I'm hoping that you have a chance before we jump into social hour to really have a conversation with yourself and to say, here are 3 things that I do not want to lose. I'm going to jump back into the noise and the activity of my day and back with my family and back into my to-do list. But here are 3 things that I want to water every day. I want to nurture, because that's the way I'm going to grow my soul, by doing that. And it's what I'm going to take, it's the gift that I'm going to give myself and take away from this day.